Well, surprise, and guess who? Hi, Dee.
Hi, Skip.
Where are we?
Well, this is Orna Villa,
Beautiful,
and
isn't it?
footsteps play a great part in its history.
Yes, indeed.
It was featured in Medora Field Perkinson's book, White Columns in Georgia, and here's Medora to tell us a little more about
hello,
it.
Dean. I'm so glad you're interested in this
Oh, yeah?
house. It was one of the first ones I visited when I started writing White Columns in Georgia.
That's it.
Why don't you come in and meet Mrs. Reberg, who owns the house?
I'd love
Here,
to.
ladies.
Right this way, Dean. This way, Dean. She's right in here.
I'm looking forward to this. Hello.
Thank you. Myself, Mrs. Dean, this is Mrs. Reberg. And while her husband was restoring the house, she was busy collecting all these beautiful furnishings.
I'm so delighted to meet you, Miss Reberg. How long have you owned this house?
About 15 years.
And how did you discover it?
We were looking for acreage, and we found this interesting old house that we thought had possibilities.
Did you know anything about the history of it before you bought
Oh,
it?
yes, Dr. Means is well known in this area.
I was entranced with this piano. Is it as old as the house?
I doubt if it is. It was brought out of the old Dr. Moore home when it was burning.
Does it still play?
Yes.
Oh, I should say it does.
And there's an interesting story about that. One morning I was in the kitchen giving instructions for dinner when I heard the chord. And my cook looked up at me. She said, "You're not going to town."
Ooh, it gives
And I
me
did.
goosebumps. I love this room. What was it originally in the
This
house?
was
Miss
the old
Reberg?
parlor.
The old parlor. And where did that door go?
That led to a passageway in which were some back steps that went upstairs where the servants carried coal and water for the young men that were students at Emory.
Isn't that interesting? And I love the old sideboard and the silverware. That is most unusual.
That is part of a service that was a gift from the groomsmen to my mother and father when they married.
And over here is the fireplace. Is the fireplace just as it was, Miss Reberg?
Yes, I'm told by the Means family that this was the first cast iron grate that was brought to this area and was imported from England. And if you notice, there are little prongs down here that originally a basket
Yes.
rested on. And coal was burned in this fireplace.
Well, that was most unusual, wasn't it?
Yes, because they burn logs in tremendous fireplaces and all the rest of the rooms in the house.
Was this cupboard always here?
No, that was a window that we closed up. And you'll notice that the trim on this window and the others are very unusual in the refinement and detail.
Yes.
And that is unusual because all of these things were built by slave labor.
Oh, I think it is just delightful. I believe you have some very interesting guests here, Miss Reberg. I'd like to meet them.
Yes, I do. They are grandchildren and great-grandchildren of old Dr. Means. And if you'll just have a seat, I'll go and invite them in to join us.
Thank you. I'd love to do that.
Miss Dickinson, this is Mrs. Kitchens, who is a great-granddaughter of Dr. Means.
Hello.
And next is Mr. Griffin, who is a grandson of Dr. Alexander Means.
So happy to meet you, Mr.
And the
Griffin.
next is Mrs. Johnson from Gainesville, who is a granddaughter of Dr. Means.
Hello, Miss Johnson.
And next is Mrs. Campbell from Atlanta, the mother of Miss Kitchens, who is a granddaughter of Dr. Means.
My, such distinguished company, and I think, first of all, I would like to talk to Mrs. Campbell over here. Miss Campbell, when you came into this room, the first thing you said was, "Oh, my, the memories it brings back."
And they were so sweet and so overpowering.
Have you any especially vivid one you'd like to tell me about?
Well, I remember so many times how I hated to have so many people come in there because we had a great many of very learned and wonderful people in this old house.
Yes, and when you were a little girl, did you
And
see much of your grandfather?
I saw a great deal of my grandfather because he was not a stern man, but he was a man you had to, he was not common.
Yes.
And I saw a great deal of him because he was very nice to me.
And didn't you
And
used
I
to
was-
go up to the door and ask him for something
I
special?
did ask him to save all his cigar boxes from my
Cigar
doll
boxes.
dresses.
You put your doll dresses
Yes,
in them.
in there. And he was very nice, even to sometimes putting them aside so I'd have the box free.
I think that is a wonderful memory.
It was very sweet memory to me and lasting.
And Miss Johnson, I believe you also lived in this house, did
I
you
lived
not?
nearly all of my life here, but I did not know my grandfather. He died before I was born.
What's your most vivid memory in this house?
Well, the memory my father was 15 when the war between the states broke out, and he was going to run away to enlist, and somebody told my grandfather, who, as they say, was a very stern man, and he sent for him to come up to his study, and he said, if a boy of mine ever ran away for any cause, he could never come home. Mm-hmm. And he told my father if he'd wait, if they were still fighting the second year, he would consent to his going. And he did go when he was 16 and fought 3 years. And after the war was over, my grandfather met every train down at the Covington station trying to see his son who had been wounded. And when he would lean on his gold-headed cane and he had his silk hat, he said, have you seen my son? Yes, to a number of boys who came. And finally one, the most ragged and dirty of the lot, stood before him. And he said eagerly, young man, have you seen my boy, Frank Means? And the boy looked at him, and he said, Father, don't you know me? And the silk hat went across the railroad tracks, and the gold-headed cane went in another direction, and his father put his arms around his wounded boy who was returning.
Oh, that is a thrilling story. And over here we have Mr. Griffin, who is the great-grandson, the grandson of Dr. Means, and you lived in this house some of the time.
I lived in this house the last year of my college career.
And across the street for the rest of the time. And this is Miss Kitchens, and I believe you also lived in this house, didn't you?
Yes, I was born and reared here.
Born and reared in this wonderful home. I know it has a good many memories for you.
Oh, it really has.
And, what's that?
What is that?
What is it?
Sounds like Uncle Tobe's footsteps. Oh, my, I feel like I should go in the bedroom and cover my head again like I did when I was a child.
Oh, it's only Skip, and Skip, I think...
I smell coffee in here.
You fool me because...
I believe Uncle Toby was one of the wild members of the family
Oh,
who disappeared,
yes.
and
He
you used to hear
disappeared.
him walk up and
Every
down on
night,
the porch.
2 o'clock.
Well, we'll have to hear some more about that story, but
We will.
our time has run out,
I'm afraid it has, so let's revert to a live presentation.
and hear some more about that ghost story.